All right, in this video, I'm gonna be talking about the Bells of Steel plate-loaded cable tower, a product that has been around for a long time, but is still maintaining its dominance, not only as I believe it is the best seller on the Bells of Steel website, going pretty strong based on the reviews, but Bells of Steel did ask what I wanted to kind of check out from them, so this was sent to me free for review, and amongst all the things that I wanted to check out, there's one other thing I'll share with you guys in the future. This one I really wanted to test for a number of reasons. I want to highlight that right here up front. Why I wanted to check out the plate loaded versus the weight stack, because I had the option of both, is that this one, I think the thing it really has going for it, a number of things, but first of which being that it is relatively inexpensive for what it is. It's fairly versatile in the way you can kind of set it up, not to mention all the different attachments, and there are some unique things with this as far as these like cable orientations compared to other cable setups that are relatively in that budget category. I'll say this many times, but it is a 2-to-1 ratio or a 1-to-1 ratio with the cables that also has some versatility. It's also very practical when you consider, again, I'll touch on this many times, the way I'm personally using it with a weight horn, the fact that I can pick this up, move it around my gym, shimmy it around. It's not super high. Now at the time of this recording, we are in the middle of Black Friday, so I got some notes here and they did give me permission. I have it in writing here that I could share this at the time of this recording, but you can stay tuned that this is likely going to be part of some early Black Friday sales. Bells of Steel is going to be putting out starting November 18th. They got a Black Friday sale coming up starting on November 20th. And they also got some Cyber Week stuff. So I imagine once you start seeing early Black Friday to maybe Black Friday, they didn't tell me the specifics on this item, only that it will be part of that. So I do want to put that out there, guys, in case you guys are picking it up. But if you do want to help support me in the channel, it goes without saying, as always, I got this link down below for anything Bells of Steel help support me in the channel, along with that daily updated Black Friday deal list that I have. I'll also post down below in the description box as well. And just to be clear on the price and my setup, this is the plate loaded version, the 80.75 inches with the upright, which is what I have. And there's a bunch of other add-ons. There's an aluminum pulley kit add-on. I'll address all those things as we go along here. Now I'll also say this more than once, but on their website, they're very explicit, as many other racks and cable setups say, you want to bolt this thing to the floor or you want to bolt it to the wall. I personally wanted to choose something that I would not recommend at all. I would say do not do this, but I saw some pictures and I was very curious how it would work out if I chose to not bolt this thing to the wall and actually opt for what I saw in the picture, which is picking up a weight horn. They forgot to send this to me and I actually ordered one really quickly off Amazon, not realizing the dimensions were a little bit different. So the dimensions are actually 2.3 inches by 2.3 inches on the uprights. And as I quickly learned, Bells of Steel is actually one of the few companies that actually makes this. So I did go ahead on their website and place the order myself. And I will say with their shipping, this thing came in about 2 days when I ordered this weight horn, but this is what I'm using to attach on the back end of the upright. Now I did not have the weight horn for maybe a week or two, so you'll likely see clips of me just simply loading on some plates on top of the weight stack. Again, would not recommend that at all. This is just something I chose to do. As everything, do at your own risk. Now getting into assembly, unboxing, and first impressions before we get up close and talking about the pros and cons there. Comes in 2 simplistic boxes. You get one long one and one short one. When you open up out of the box, I would say it is kind of standard fare if anything that has been imported, and I'll get to that a little bit later. Downside though, I noticed right away, is that they do not give you any kind of tools, and that includes any kind of mounting hardware. They give you the actual mounts for the rack, but they do not give you the actual nuts and studs and all of that stuff. Other companies I've checked out in the past are also in the budget category that can be mounted to a wall, actually did include those things, so I actually wish they did include that. Assembly and directions were not that bad. There's a couple little crevices and some angles you really have to kind of get in there, and doing it one person like I did probably isn't the best way of doing it. You'd like to use kind of 2 people, but pretty much everything I assemble here is always one person, so that's always gets a little sketchy. As far as accessories are concerned, you got some bare bones stuff to start off with. They do have a lot of stuff, and I'll address some other off-brand things here in a second. Again, they give you little mounting parts there. They give you this very simple metal, just it's the 2-to-1 kind of joiner connector type deal where you can take the 2 cables, join them together to make it a 1-to-1 ratio. Otherwise, if you're using just the one cable itself, it is a 2-to-1 ratio. And just to explain that again, 2-to-1 ratio means whatever's on the stack there with the weights, it is cut in half. If you want to get the full weight on the weight stack with both plates on there, you join these things together and now you got the 1-to-1. That's their true weight on there. And I do appreciate it versus nothing, and these are useful for machines such as this. They do give you some handles with various little clips. I can't judge the long-term use of this. I really was not using these. These are good to use, but they make much stronger, more substantial ones. I think they even make like aluminum-based ones that might be, I assume, have better stitching. These seem a little cheap, so I wouldn't think this would last that long. And then by the way, the warranty on this for cables and pulleys are 90 days with actual lifetime warranty on all the steel structural frame. I'll get into later how I use it, but there were some off-brand equipment that I thought paired really well with this type of machine. But they do make, despite their weird, kind of dimensions, you're gonna say that weird, but the 2.3 inch by 2.3 inch upright size, they do make their own attachments that go on this. There's actually some cool ones, even like that wrist roller I kind of want to check out that will fit on there. But there's some off-brand companies such as Porter Phys Ed, which I'm going to be checking out some of their stuff in the future. They make some specialized stuff for specifically this cable weight stack. Did actually give me a promo code if you want to save extra money from that guy. Great dude. Got a chance to talk to him a little more. So that for sure is going to open up a lot more doors, or at least get into more maybe ideal positions you might be seeking for a cable weight stack such as this. A lot of people put out other kind of hacks using this machine because it's been around for so long and it was a very popular item going on, 1 to 2 years since it's been out. Kaizen DIY did some stuff. I guess I know the Porter Phys Ed showed some stuff, and there's a lot of things even on their Bells of Steel themselves have actually kind of showed off some little things with their other attachments that are actually pretty cool. All right, getting up to some pros and cons on the machine. First of which, with what these weight horns are sitting on, this is just kind of like a plastic here. This is going up and down on plastic. So that is something, if you want a smoother experience, you can upgrade the aluminum pulleys, and you could definitely silicone spray this. I'm not trying to just do lip service to this because I've said this many times on other budget racks, and this is just me personally. I've said this on many instances. So yes, having a smooth situation is always ideal, but if you gave me something like this, I'll say this many times, I could live with this no problem. It has more friction. This gets into like, how much of the actual upgrade do you want, or just quality of life features do you want as far as a smooth experience? But no, it is not super smooth. It has a little bit of friction, as you can kind of expect. Some people might think that was a good thing. It kind of feels like more of a raw type of feel. Pulleys themselves are fine. There's nylon pulleys. I'm sure they would last, a long time. Cable rigging was fine. That was not complicated. I like about this that other single stack pulleys have had these little like chain deals. I forget the brand I looked at before that was racked to my wall, but they had this little like chain mechanism you had to adjust for the cable tension, so I appreciate that's not happening. Kind of a little bit of cable twist that happened over time, otherwise that's been fine. What I also do appreciate, and this is an imported brand, and I'll talk about this a few things, is the powder coating on this is good. When I touched it, that was something I noticed that set a little bit of an upgrade in quality compared to other things that are in that budget category. This is 14 gauge steel though. Now coming over here looking at the dual pulleys, this does slide up and down pretty easy. Again, it's on plastic, and you could silicone spray this a little bit more. I've noticed this design before. You can comment on what video I was doing, but I saw this star before, which made me think, I'm just totally talking out loud, this might be coming from the same factory that I saw the other video for, but I'm just, again, digressing here. A little bit of this action happening. If you do some, say, curls from the bottom, you're going to get some little bit of play or wobble there. Notice that this is pretty much what you're working with. When you get close together, they're going to hit the sides. Same deal if you're going to start doing stuff. You might have that cable rubbing against the metal. So, it does reach out pretty decent. I mean, you can go way out here, a full 180 on each side. So that is good. And in case you're jumping around a bit, just to repeat it for maybe the third time, these are 2-to-1 ratios with one cable, or you can go here and put them together for a 1-to-1 ratio. All right, now I'm going to talk about the practical function, pros and cons, how I've been using it, and what I've experienced with my decent amount of time using this thing and actually trying to break this bad boy. Before I do that, I'm going to go ahead and load weight on this weight horn. As I keep saying, this was my own personal preference. I would not recommend this. The company does not recommend this, although they do show it, so I'm just going to leave it at that. Something like a lockjaw type of clip is going to be necessary. I use regular clips, and the bumper plates would just kind of slide and push right off. Without, again, making this video 30 plus minutes, because I could, breaking out all the positions. What I found was overall practically it works totally fine. Were there some things with maybe safety, especially with this, I'd be mindful of? Once I got the weight horn versus just stacking the weights on, once the weight horn came in, I felt like that made a big difference because the plates would kind of gradually kind of slide off. These handles are useful for a couple things. I'll get to it, but like I've already said again, that I didn't really use these too much. I just use basic handles or some other handles that I have. When it comes to lat pulls, pull downs, oftentimes I did a lot of those. They do make a little brace for this, but this depends. If you're using this kind of a stubby height, you're going to be somewhat limited. There's a top hole here that's pretty much useless because you're going to hit these cables up there. But if you put this in the shortest increment here, or if you just had a tight handle, I did lat pull downs, no problem. Anything top down, triceps, lat pull downs, even diagonal stuff, depends on the weight. Usually, pretty much on all these single stack towers, even the ones that have some built-in stabilizers-ish, kind of like the Tandem Tower with Force USA or the Getter X1, the Phoenix Tower, even that one, you gotta be a little mindful if you could tip the thing over. So I was constantly, if you're watching the video, I'm always looking at the machine to make sure it's not gonna tip on me. I will keep saying it. Do not do what I'm doing. Do this in your own risk, both to the floor or the wall. I think the biggest issue was down here doing stuff such as bicep curls. When that started to get heavy, it would maybe wanna tip this way. I believe that was the only one that was kind of iffy. And that leads me to one of my favorite exercises on here, which was maybe a little iffy. It depends how heavy you're going, but I've said this before, even on the Phoenix Tower, I use the squat harness V4, and I just got their new rip ramp in. I'll do maybe a whole separate video for this. Shameless plug, got discounts for both of these. I use them a lot because they are kind of a jack of all trade. This new ramp has a wider base, and I found it does stay pretty, it doesn't really move on me at all. With this harness and the ramp here, kind of like a pendulum type of a squat action, felt excellent. I loved it. I have to kind of watch what I'm doing. I keep watching this thing to make sure it's not going to tip on me, but that felt great in the glutes. That was an excellent exercise, one I'll keep coming back to. However, doing things like lunges, that was something where the machine doesn't want to be as stable. The other question that comes up, because these are, maybe for lack of a better term, a poor man's version of the new, articulating arms that are out there, but still they get the job done for what they do. I can't really do a rear fly that tight together, but you don't necessarily have to because they're already pretty close. So I found that even doing like a rear fly like this, you are sacrificing a little bit of range of motion here versus starting here, but it was maybe a little negligible. Coming down to flies, you can do some chest flies on here, but you're gonna want these longer straps. With a regular handle, which I was using predominantly at the time, you didn't really notice it. I couldn't really do that too much, but if I'm going here, I got a nice stretch, and I can finish off. In fact, I should have done more of these because this does feel pretty decent, to be honest with you. I've said this many times. That's one of the reasons I like the Total Gym. I like the tighter spacing when I'm doing a fly versus having the tension pulling me way out that way. So that actually feels pretty good. Otherwise, you're seeing me do probably a bunch of chest presses, usually at a super setting, and just kind of doing a close grip press here. But even if you did it with this angle, it's really not too bad if you have these long as you have these straps. So I'm talking out loud with you guys. I kind of regret not using these things actually more. I'm gonna make some comparisons here in a second, but in summary, this freestanding cable tower, is it gonna replace and maybe compete with the other freestanding cable towers that are out there like the Getter X Tornado arms or the Force USA Tandem Tower, or even possibly, I'll get to this too, the new Bells of Steel 3x3 Oblivion Tower, which some might consider the version 2 or the upgrade bigger brother of this one, which is 11 gauge steel 3x3 plate loaded or weight stack, but pretty much has the same functionality as this. I'll first just say, comparing this to the Phoenix or the Tandem Tower, stuff of that nature, obviously that's not a fair comparison because they just do way more. And some of those you don't have to necessarily, I don't know what the website says, but it looks like it. And I've done it with my Phoenix Tower, which is off camera right here. I just push it out of the way. Those other two towers, the Phoenix and the Tandem, can stand up structurally without having being bolted to the ground. Although the website may say that, so check that. As with everything, do stuff at your own risk. In some ways, this little plate-loaded cable stack tower might beat out its new older brother, the Oblivion, because when you look at the price difference, the Oblivion is sitting at $14.99 with the plate-loaded option. That's with an upright. And if you compare that to, say, the Getter X, which again is maybe not fair because I think this is a Black Friday discount deal, but their plate-loaded tower is $14.83, which is cheaper, and arguably I'd say does a little bit more, and those Tornado swivel arms are, I'd say, much better, of course, than just using something like those two pulleys. You are getting with the Oblivion a little more doors that are opening and aluminum handles, so no question that's going to be a better quality of life feature. But based on how this thing is structurally designed, the fact that it is bigger, chunkier, heavier, this, I don't know if you could pull off, at least me personally, if I was doing what I'm doing with the weight horn, I don't know if I could really pull that off as easy. So the charm for me is that it is so lightweight and versatile, I kind of can move it around, and that's what I like about it. And if you're comparing the Oblivion, which is, people are really looking forward to this, I think it's up for pre-sale, comparing to the Phoenix, the Getter X, I think that's a hard comparison. And of course, and the Force USA is even, even more than that by $24.99. Yes, I'm trying not to put this thing on a giant pedestal. It does have its shortcomings. It is cheap, it is budget, it can be a little janky and flimsy just in the way you're picking up and using it just by nature of its design, so I definitely want to get that out there. In some ways, this is also what it has going for it. The fact that it is a relatively inexpensive, fairly practical and functional cable tower for the price still makes this one of their more competitive offerings. And in some ways, they might not like me saying this, but I kind of think of this little thing here as what defines Bells of Steel. And it should go without saying, hopefully don't get offended by that because this is their #1 seller as of right now. It's something that is inexpensive. I don't look at Bells of Steel stuff as like top of the line, top tier. It's imported stuff with great customer service. And I did a whole video talking about in the last one about USA versus China. And that customer service, whether you like it or not, and just lifetime warranties and dealing with a real company, logistical stuff, does come with a price tag. So you're paying a little bit more for that. But all things considered, I think the price is still kind of fair. Aside from price point, I also think of Bells of Steel as still putting out things that are fairly innovative. There's some really cool things. There's a new Lake Extension Lake Curl they just teased the other day. So that's definitely also something I'm looking forward to. Also, finally, maybe most important, one that's definitely customer service, people-centered, and even kind of reviewer-centered like me. Because like I said at the start of the video, they let me say and do whatever I want. They don't get offended by it like other companies. So that is definitely all cool stuff in my book. I'm sure there's some people that are hearing this that don't care about all that sentimental feel-good stuff and customer service stuff. They just want the cheapest cable tower that's out there, of which I think there's definitely other cheaper options that are out there that get especially rigged against a wall. However, I don't think there's one that can do what I'm doing right here. Again, at your own risk, do not do this. Using a upright and a weight horn so that I can move this thing around, shimmy it, or not want to rack it to the wall. I don't know of another one that's out there. But definitely correct me down below if there is such a thing. But that is it though, guys. Stay tuned for other future videos on these cable series. I got more things I'm gonna test out with different kind of builds and functions, really getting into the pros and cons of, say, a functional trainer. What are the pros and cons of a dedicated, say, weight stack or cable tower type machine, and just showcasing the various versatilities for a practical but efficient setup.